We looked at how big the market opportunity was and got excited by that, and that bought us wiggle room. It's like, well, it's not going to happen this quarter, but we get the first couple clients on, they become the references, they become the case studies, and then this will just feed itself. It'll feed the machine.
He spent years building technology for an industry that moves slowly and bets large. And the deal that looked like a breakthrough turned out to be a different kind of problem entirely. He's run corporate development, M&A, and international expansion at the C-level. This conversation is about what happens when a partnership that makes sense on paper starts costing you something the model didn't account for. This is Decision State. Take me back to a point where the partnership still looked like a huge win from the outside, but internally you were starting to realize momentum wasn't building the way everyone expected. If you could explain what was actually happening.
Sure. A bit of context. My role at that time was building channels of revenue. So where a lot of people, when they're in sales organizations, they're selling B2B or B2C. They're trying to directly get accounts. My job was more strategic in that, I was trying to find other channels where a sales force, a group of people would go out on our behalf and sell our software platform for us. This company that we began negotiating with, a massive company, right? Thousands of employees, a global footprint, a sales force bigger than our entire company as far as FTEs are concerned, and a respected brand, and they already had hundreds of clients. So it was an easy motion, hypothetically, to take our platform and then have it resold by their team to their current clients. And on paper, it was all systems go. We negotiated a commercial agreement, a reseller agreement, a sales motion. What we failed to do was we didn't anticipate the amount of education we would need to do of their sales force, so they would be not just properly incentivized to go sell our platform, but excited and ready to go sell our platform. All the little things that have to go right for a partnership like that to be successful. We didn't really know that going into it. We signed the agreement. There was marketing, a lot of fanfare. We even had a couple test clients. Everything was right. And then we got the veritable punch to the face.
So what was going on in the room at that time? Is everyone just thinking this was a slam dunk, or?
I think we were a little more pragmatic than that. We knew it would take time to ramp up, but we had very grand ambitions. Like we thought it would be a material percentage of our net new revenue growth. And when you make that bet, that affects current hiring for not only your current sales marketing team, but the support team that's going to back it up. You shift budget or spend to other parts of the business because you think this channel will handle itself. And that's not how it went down, right? We needed to spend a lot more time virtually, but mostly face to face, where these people were understanding their client book, their current incentive structure, other products they were supposed to be selling. There was just a lot more moving parts than I think we anticipated. And so we had to build collateral. We had to build training guides. We had to do it in many forms, many different mediums, right? We had to have PDFs. We had to have Loom videos. We had to have webinars. All these things we had not anticipated.
We talked offline. During that stretch you were with Cherre, what would you say is going on at that time? What was your day-to-day looking like?
My main role was establish as many partnerships as I could establish. And when I say partnership, I mean the legal guardrails and the commercial terms so that any company that offered data of its own could sell it through our platform in a marketplace. They could connect all the data in that platform into our data management system. And then there needed to be a commercial arrangement that would either allow that company to get paid when they share the data, or when we built a pipeline, or if net new analytics were created, what would the revenue sharing structure of that be? And for those that are not familiar with Cherre, it is a global property type agnostic data management platform. That's why we thought the partnership strategy was so important. It's because we were a small-ish company, but we were definitely punching above our weight. We had a lot of clients whose names you would recognize, right? The real estate arms of banks, the real estate arms of insurance companies, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, huge names. And so we wanted to leverage that momentum. Other companies' sales forces go sell on our behalf so we could scale the business up without having to hire a bunch of internal FTEs as the industry moved more from a growth at all cost mentality more toward to a sustainable, profitable type of focus and motion.
Specifically, like your day to day, what were you running at that time, and what was at stake?
So I had a revenue bogey. Unlike a salesperson who might have a particular book and they need to sell $1 million a year or whatever, I was promising a group of partnerships that, when brought together in full motion, would be delivering a significant amount of company revenue quarter over quarter once a lot of the momentum was built. And as you can imagine, some partnerships were more mature than others. And so because of that, I had a very complex Gantt style view of how long the partnership had been in place, who were the key players, who was their ideal customer profile, and how well did that mix with our ideal customer profile. So there was a lot of analytics that went into it. So my day to day was managing all of those partnerships and being the escalation point when it got to me when we had to negotiate contracts or commercial structures.
Okay, and now what you're in, could you talk about what your day to day looks like now,
Yeah.
a few months later?
So it's really funny because we have a partnership with each other. So where Cherre was global and property type agnostic, real estate business analytics, aka REBA, my current company where I'm now COO, we are solely focused on multifamily housing. So we have a partnership where we will send all of the non-multifamily business to Cherre, and Cherre will send all of the vertically integrated multifamily focused clients to us. But my role is obviously changed. Where I was at Cherre and I was in charge of all of our partnerships, now as COO, I'm responsible for scaling the entire organization across all departments.
What does a week that's genuinely piling up, I'd say, look like for you? Not crisis mode, just a heavy week. What does that look like now?
As you can imagine, at my level, my calendar is largely spoken for. The entire day is usually booked with meetings, but I'm 3 months into the role, so I'm trying not to force my ways of thinking about the company. I'm trying to fit into this model. But a lot of my day is meetings with current customers, understanding what's on their wish list, what they want to see on our roadmap, if they're in pilot, how the pilots are going, if they've been a long time customer, what else we could hopefully sell to them. All of that customer and account management stuff. I also do some partnership work. And so negotiating those integration partnerships is also a big part of my job. So that's another chunk of meetings in my day. But also the advantage of being at a larger company with a significant balance sheet is we're also looking at other companies we might want to partner with, AKA buy. And so corporate development is also a big part of my job.
Because you've been at the C-level, I believe, 6 years across a few companies. What's something about running a software organization that you didn't understand until you were inside of it?
You learn very quickly what you didn't learn in school. I don't have a law degree, yet I'm negotiating contracts every day. I'm not an engineer, but I'm looking at SQL queries and code base often with my team. And what happens when you're doing all of these things is you're thrown into the fire and it's overwhelming, and you have to find a comfort zone and learn what you don't know and will never know versus what you don't know but you can quickly learn and get up to speed with. That's a big skill as an executive. And what I discovered was I'm never going to be a coder, I'm never going to be an attorney, but I am going to have to understand what engineers and our general counsel and everyone else is talking about every day so that we can solve problems for our clients.
You've done this in multiple companies, raised capital, opening offices, running M&A.
Yep.
When multiple of those are live at the same time, how does that work? Is there a thing that doesn't get enough attention?
Always. When you live in a life of, I'll call it context switching, AI is what helps me survive the world of constant context switching. Because I could have this hour I'm taping a podcast with you. The next hour I'm presenting internally to my team on risks across our portfolio and opportunities for upsell. The hour after that, I'm meeting with one of our largest clients. The hour after that, we're planning for a user conference that we're hosting. The hour after that, I'm meeting with a prospect. And it's just like, so you're context switching all the time. And this isn't like I have 30 minutes in between meetings to go prep. I have 5. So a lot of what AI is doing for me is surfacing all of the important information I need as I'm preparing to walk into my next meeting. It's a big unlock.
Deals. They have their own timelines. People inside your organization have their own pace. So what happens when two things are running at different speeds?
And that's always going to happen. Some sales cycles are going to be longer than others. Some negotiation cycles will be longer than others. What I've learned in the last 6 years as an executive, the most important thing you can do in any meeting with any audience of any size, any kind, is at the end of the meeting, you agree upon what commitments you're making as a follow-up and the timeline of those commitments. If you don't leave a meeting without committing to something, what did you really accomplish during that meeting? And was that meeting necessary in the first place?
The conversation we had in the beginning with the deal that maybe looked huge on paper, but took much longer than expected to build. If we could go back to that period.
During that negotiation, there weren't a lot of commitments made around, we're going to train these 12 people in this region on these features and expect 5 leads to be introduced within the next quarter. Like, we didn't set those KPIs. We talked high level about, what we would hope for year over year in the future, but we didn't break it down into tactical commitments. The idea of the RACI matrix. R stands for responsible, A for accountable, C for consulted, I for informed. Having that RACI matrix built basically along every meeting, along every project, is the difference between something being successful and not successful. And we didn't have that in place when we were putting this big partnership together, and that was a lesson learned. It was a mistake.
So was there something that was happening inside the sales process that maybe made the execution harder than expected?
There was a little bit of key personnel movement on their side. As you can imagine, in a massive company that has thousands of employees, a Game of Thrones. There's often a Game of Thrones situation going on. There's a lot of politics. There's knives out, right? And so you whoever is in charge of sales for a particular region, their days may be numbered if they're not performing, or whoever's running customer success for a particular product, so there's a lot of movement, and you just have to be ready for that shifting of executive leadership. That was one point of chaos. Number 2, we didn't understand that, especially in a much larger organization, we're a large enough company to have process and system in place, but not so much there's like fiefdoms and politics and different incentive structures. When you get to 5,000 employees, now you have all these products that you offer, many of which you've acquired over the years, and there's different commission structures for each of those products. Some you offer high upfront commissions because you want to sell a lot of it right now, or some you offer trailers because you don't want to sell a product for just 1 year and then it churns. You want 3 to 5 year agreements. Some you want to incentivize based on a land and expand philosophy. So we didn't understand all of those incentive systems at the partner. And if we didn't fit correctly into the best part of those incentive systems, the people who are responsible for selling our platform wouldn't be motivated or excited to think of us before they thought of other solutions.
Is it fair to say the team maybe kept telling itself, or what did the room keep telling itself during that period that made it easier to keep extending the timeline?
We looked at how big the market opportunity was and got excited by that, and that bought us wiggle room. It's like, well, it's not going to happen this quarter, but we get the first couple clients on, they become the references, they become the case studies, and then this will just feed itself. It'll feed the machine.
More like operating off the original optimism, even though maybe reality was shifting.
Yes, 100%.
When these timelines maybe start stretching, did the conversations inside the company actually change, or did everyone treat it like, oh, it's temporary friction?
The first quarter, it was temporary friction. The second quarter, there was risk, but we didn't know how to describe it. We didn't know what to name it because there was some positive movement. But then by quarter three, when I actually transitioned from there to my new role, what I'm hearing is if you lose the early momentum, it's just really hard to like build it back up again. It's kind of like a train on the tracks. It's really hard to get it moving, but once it gets moving, that momentum is self-perpetuating. But we never got the train fully moving at a real speed. And when that happens, people get excited about a different shiny bell, about a different potential partnership, a different product. And so then things go by the wayside. And then you feel like you've invested a lot of time for nothing.
When you look back at how leadership read that partnership at the start, was there anything you were not seeing clearly as in retrospect?
No, I think we saw the vision clearly, but we didn't ask all of the tough questions at first and then demand real answers for clarification. So we knew that this company put their client mixes in different buckets based on size and the products they bought, because they're more likely to buy your product, they're more likely to use your product, they're more likely to be excited about your product and say nice things about you. You need to start there, because anybody you've ever interviewed that's had a successful B2B business, your best growth engine are your current happy customers. And so we didn't go down the rabbit hole enough at the beginning of that conversation to figure out, like, okay, you have 650 clients that fit potentially in our ideal bucket. But of those 650, like, who are the 10 that are perfect for us to start with right out the gate in the first quarter? We should have done that.
Would it be fair to say the cost that maybe didn't show up in the original calculus, or I guess maybe another way to ask, what did it cost you that didn't show up in the original calculus, not financially, just operationally, that you took forward?
Yeah, it costs us time. It's not a question of like being able to produce something. It's a question of where do you focus your time and where is that time going to give you the best ROI? We got excited about the big number. We thought we needed to develop collateral and education materials that would speak to everybody, when instead we should have focused on what would speak to those 10 companies.
Once the organization could name, okay, this is what was actually happening, did decision-making going forward become cleaner?
I wish. What happened was we noticed the problem. And so we did go through the exercise of naming particular companies and started having those negotiations. But as we went through the sales process, what we discovered was this was still a consultative sell, right? These people had been trained up, but they still really needed us. So we weren't at the point where we were saving a bunch of time because they were owning the sales process. They would have an initial conversation. Questions would get asked that were a level deeper that they couldn't answer. Therefore, they had to come back to us and we had to insert ourselves into the conversation and then slowly build that FAQ, that library of questions and concerns that we could answer. We got better over time, and now there's a whole library and there's a handful of people there that are really well trained up on the platform, and I think it's going well. But like, it took 9 months longer than what was initially expected for it to take.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on AI because you mentioned trying to introduce AI into the company while the market is moving incredibly fast. If we could go there for a minute, because it sounds like a very different version of uncertainty to me. What does pressure around AI actually look like inside leadership rooms right now when everyone feels the need to move so quickly?
I mean, that's the problem, right? Is that it's not just that like leveraging AI makes you a more productive person faster. It's that you realize everyone has access to these same tools. So that rising tide has lifted all boats. And now the expectation is you're going to produce things in days instead of weeks or weeks instead of months. And it's not like we're getting better and everyone else is staying stagnant. No, everyone is getting better. So this is just the new normal of pace. And when that happens, how do you rethink job descriptions, requirements for hiring new employees, requirements for getting promotions, how people might move around from one department to another because in this world of AI, their skill set is better fit somewhere else. We're completely rethinking how we scale as a company and putting the right butts in the right seats where those seats actually are. And change management is really hard. It didn't matter nearly as much before AI, but now that there's AI, the expectation is that we respond to customer support tickets same day. We get feature requests done in one sprint. Like everything is faster now. Because of that, we've had to have some transparent and sometimes challenging conversations with employees who are a little skeptical of AI. Like we're learning so much as we go. So it's just amazing what it can do at pace, but like you need to be quick on your feet.
Is there a tension now between moving carefully and not wanting to fall behind everyone else?
100%. In fact, you probably see this in your own world. There are some people who are early adopters and tinkerers and experimenters, and they will just go try and they'll ask for forgiveness later instead of permission. And they're the ones that are pushing the boundaries and usually leading us to update our AI usage policy. And we appreciate them because they're continuing to think outside the intuitive fence. On the complete other side of that, you've got people who are saying, I don't want to try something and it results in a data breach or bankrupts our company. They're very scared, right? The truth usually lies somewhere in the happy medium where you're trying something, AI hallucinates, gives you a bad result. You have to have a back and forth conversation with it. Maybe you build a skill or a project with certain artifacts built in as you learn. And then the key is sharing that information that you learned across the rest of the team so everybody's getting smarter. It's not just people that are learning on their own in silos.
Yeah, you used a phrase about a breakage I really liked. What were you seeing internally that made you frame it that way?
Anytime you introduce new features into a software platform, it will create bugs. It will create breakage. If you go slowly and you do a bunch of testing and you guarantee no breakage at all, you fall way, way behind your competitors. But if you move so fast and break everything, well, then your existing clients are upset and they churn. So the right amount of breakage is we're moving at a speed where we can introduce a lot of new product features and integrate them into our current platform at the requests of our clients, where a few things break and we have to fix them and test them. That tells us that we're moving at real speed, but not so much breakage that it's actually affecting day-to-day performance for our clients who are, operating, investing, and managing apartment buildings.
Have you seen situations where the speed we discussed itself starts affecting judgment, or like where keeping up, I guess, becomes the pressure driving the decision?
The way that REBA is architected is we provide a custom single tenant instance of our platform to each client so that it's physically impossible to share information because they all have their own stack. The advantage to that is amazing cybersecurity and good, legal protections for their information. The downside is you can't really compare what you're doing to what this client is doing to what the benchmark is doing very easily, and therefore the amount that AI can help you is limited. So we're trying to figure out that happy medium while also meeting the requirements of our customers that say, you can't use our data to train your models, and there's all this fear. So we've always been a more conservative company at our core, and that conservatism has driven us to probably use new technology and tools a little more slowly and carefully than other players in the space. But what we're discovering is after February 5th, clients just have a new normal of expectations on how quickly we produce.
We mentioned 6 years at the C level. What's something that changed about how you read people during that time that you didn't expect?
You have two eyes and two ears and one mouth. Use them in that ratio.
Okay, I love that. Yeah.
I used to just want to prove that I belonged in the chair that I belonged in, so I would talk a lot and say, no, this is why you need to buy our platform. This is why we're the best. What I've learned over these, especially these last 7 years as an executive, like you need to do more discovery. You need to work with someone instead of to them. And the art of active listening is just so important at every level, but especially as an executive.
Yeah, because you've done M&A, you've raised capital. You mentioned you built internationally. Which of those would you say is the loneliest from a decision standpoint? The one where there's the least validation available?
Man, capital raising is a really lonely exercise. Which you wouldn't think on its face it is, because you're interfacing with a bunch of people. Typically, the world of capital raising is over meals and cocktails and events, and it's a very social exercise. But by its nature, it is a very, very low batting average. I'll use venture capital as an example because when I was at Navigator, we raised a multi-million-dollar A round from a bunch of investors. We met with 56 capital groups, and we got 4 term sheets. People look at that and said, wow, you got 4 term sheets. Amazing job. And I'm thinking to myself, no, we were 4 for 56, and that was viewed as good. Like, that is crazy. Like the fact that you have such a low hit rate in this world because you just have to go and find someone that totally aligns with your thesis. And so for people, so that was the venture capital world. It's probably not all that different for folks that go to institutional partners to raise capital for the real estate funds. They get told no a lot. And you just have to build a muscle that makes you okay with learning for why people say no and applying that to the next lesson.
Yeah, that's great. So for people who are listening, they want to learn more about you, your companies. Where's the best place to follow your work and reach out?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Definitely the only Kevin Shtofman on LinkedIn. A pretty unique last name. But it's the only social media platform that I'm on. I spend a lot of time there. And I talk about a wide variety of things. It's not just real estate. It's not just tech, but I like to engage with people there.
I'll make sure all that's in the show notes. And thank you again for your time.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
The first quarter felt like temporary friction. The second quarter felt like risk nobody could fully describe yet. And by the time the pattern became clear, they'd already spent months operating off the original optimism.